Life had not been kind to Elena. At just 29, she was already balancing the weight of two worlds on her slender shoulders, working long shifts at a local diner while raising her 6-year-old son, Jamie, alone. Every paycheck was a delicate dance between rent, groceries, and the growing list of bills that seemed determined to drown her. Yet, despite the exhaustion carved into her features, there was a quiet dignity about her, a spark of determination that refused to be extinguished. That night, Elena wasn't thinking about miracles. She wasn't expecting her life to change. She was simply focused on getting home, warming her son's tiny hands, and finding something, anything, for dinner that wouldn't require skipping a meal herself. But as she turned onto a dimly lit side street, her foot hit something unexpected. She almost slipped, catching herself just in time, and when she looked down, her eyes widened. Lying there, half soaked from the rain, was a black leather wallet. The kind you didn't often see in her part of town. Thick, expensive looking, with stitching so precise it could have been handcrafted. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at it. Every instinct told her to pick it up, but another part of her hesitated. Who had dropped it? Could it be dangerous? Elena knelt and picked it up, her cold fingers fumbling as she flipped it open. Inside were several crisp $100 bills. More cash than she'd held in her hands at one time in years, and a thick stack of cards. Her breath caught. This wasn't some teenager's lost lunch money. This was serious. And right there, in that moment, Elena faced a choice. A choice that could change her life forever. Before we dive into what she did next, ask yourself, if you were standing in the freezing rain, broke, hungry, and holding more money than you'd seen in years, would you keep it? Or would you return it, not knowing what might happen next? Stay with me, because what Elena chose to do set off a chain of events she never could have imagined. A journey that would lead her from the cracked sidewalks of Brooksville to the polished marble floors of a CEO's office. And it all started with that one decision. Elena's life had been a series of uphill climbs, each one steeper than the last. After her ex-husband walked out when Jamie was just a toddler, she was left with nothing but a pile of unpaid bills, a broken-down car, and the quiet sobs of a little boy who didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. She tried everything, applying for office jobs, taking night classes, even cleaning houses on weekends. But opportunities in Brooksville were scarce, and single mothers weren't exactly at the top of anyone's hiring list. Eventually, she landed a waitressing job at Benny's Diner, a place where the smell of fried food clung to her hair long after she clocked out, and her legs ached from endless hours on her feet. Most days, her routine was a blur. Wake up before dawn, drop Jamie at the community daycare, work a double shift, pick him up, and then collapse into bed after making sure he had something, usually cereal or instant noodles, for dinner. The pay barely covered rent for their tiny, drafty apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. She kept a small notebook where she wrote down every dollar that came in and went out. The pages were filled with numbers: rent, $720, groceries, $130, utilities, $85, and then the question marks where unexpected expenses would appear. A school field trip Jamie wanted to go on, but they couldn't afford. New shoes when his toes started poking through the old pair. Medicine when the winter cough wouldn't go away. That winter had been especially brutal. The heating bill climbed higher than usual, forcing her to choose between paying it or keeping up with rent. She picked heat. Brooksville winters were unforgiving, and prayed her landlord would give her another week for the rent. Elena was proud of herself for staying honest, even when things got desperate. But honesty didn't pay the electricity bill. And the truth was, she had been standing at the edge for months, one unexpected cost away from losing everything. So when she found that wallet on the rainy street, with enough cash inside to wipe out her rent debt, buy groceries, and maybe even get Jamie a proper winter coat, the temptation was sharp, almost painful. She could take it and no one would know. But deep down, she feared something else. What would it teach Jamie if he ever found out? That question stayed with her, louder than the sound of rain pounding the pavement. Elena stood there for a long moment on that wet, gray sidewalk, the wallet heavy in her hands. She glanced around. No one in sight, just the hiss of car tires on damp asphalt and the faint glow of streetlights reflecting in puddles. She opened it again, hoping to find some clear clue about what to do. Inside were crisp bills, hundreds, maybe even $1,000, neatly folded in the cash compartment. Tucked behind them was a sleek black credit card, the kind you only ever see in luxury ads. There was also an ID card, protected in a clear plastic sleeve. She studied the name, Daniel Whitmore. The photo showed a man in his late 40s with sharp eyes and a confident smile. The address was across town in an upscale neighborhood she had only seen on her bus rides, rows of gated driveways and manicured lawns. For a moment, her mind ran wild. What if this man had so much money that losing this wallet wouldn't matter to him? What if keeping it could be the break she'd been praying for? She could finally buy Jamie that coat, settle the heating bill, and even put a little food in the fridge without rationing every bite. But then she imagined knocking on a stranger's door to return it. Imagined the look on Jamie's face if he knew she had done the right thing even when no one was watching. That vision was stronger than the temptation. Her decision clicked into place, firm and unshakable. She slipped the wallet into her purse, tightened her coat against the cold wind, and headed to the bus stop. She didn't know exactly what she'd say when she reached the address, but she knew she couldn't keep what wasn't hers. The ride across town felt endless. The bus rattled and lurched through neighborhoods she'd never walked in before, past glowing storefronts and restaurants where a single meal probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Finally, she stepped off the bus and stared at the street number on the tall stone pillars ahead. This was it, the address on the ID. The house behind the gates was massive, its windows glowing warm against the dark winter sky. Elena hesitated at the gate, shivering from more than just the cold. She reached for the intercom button, about to introduce herself, when the sound of footsteps behind her made her turn. A man in a tailored coat was walking up the driveway, his eyes narrowing in curiosity. The man stopped a few feet from her, looking both curious and cautious. His coat alone probably cost more than her month's rent, and the confidence in his stride made her feel suddenly very small. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice smooth but edged with suspicion. Elena swallowed hard, clutching the wallet like a fragile glass ornament. I found this on the sidewalk downtown. The ID said it belonged here." He took the wallet slowly, glancing down at it, and then at her. For a split second, his brows knit together, but then his expression shifted to something softer. "You actually came all the way here to return it?" She nodded, explaining briefly how she'd found it, careful not to mention how much money was inside. The man gave a quiet chuckle, more from disbelief than amusement. "Most people wouldn't have done that," he said, tucking the wallet into his coat pocket. "I'm Daniel Whitmore." The name clicked in her head. She'd seen it on billboards for a luxury hotel chain. He wasn't just wealthy. He was that Daniel Whitmore. Before she could excuse herself and scurry away, he surprised her. "Wait, you're not leaving just yet. Come inside. It's freezing out here." Inside, the house was everything she imagined rich people lived in. High ceilings, marble floors, art that looked like it belonged in a museum. She kept her hands tucked in her coat, afraid she might accidentally touch something worth more than her yearly income. Over tea, he asked her about herself. She told him she was a single mom, working 2 jobs, and just trying to keep the lights on. There was no self-pity in her tone, just the quiet honesty of someone who'd been carrying more weight than she could handle. He listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. Then, almost casually, he said, "I have a position open at my hotel downtown. It's not glamorous, front desk, flexible hours, but it comes with benefits and a decent salary. Would you be interested?" Elena's heart thudded in her chest. This had to be some kind of dream. "Why, yes," she stammered. "Absolutely." That was how it started. How a cold winter evening turned into an opportunity that would change everything. Within weeks, she was standing behind the polished front desk of the Whitmore Grand, dressed in a crisp uniform and greeting guests with a smile. The paycheck was more than double what she'd made cleaning offices, and for the first time in years, she could pay her bills without juggling which ones to skip. Her life was far from perfect, but the shift was real. She could breathe again. Jamie had a warm coat, and their pantry was never empty. Every time she walked into that hotel, she remembered how close she'd been to keeping that wallet, and how choosing differently had opened a door she didn't even know existed. For a brief, shining moment, Elena believed the tide had finally turned. The CEO had offered her a consulting role, remote work, flexible hours, and pay that was more than she'd ever dreamed possible. She used the first paycheck to clear her rent arrears, stock her kitchen with fresh groceries, and even buy a second-hand laptop so she wouldn't have to type reports on her cracked phone screen. But life, as she knew all too well, had a way of testing the strongest resolve. It started with a sudden phone call from her landlord. He was selling the building. Everyone had 2 months to vacate. Elena's heart sank. She had barely just caught her breath from the storm of financial struggle, and now she was facing homelessness again. To make matters worse, her daughter Sophia developed a persistent cough that wouldn't go away. At first, Elena thought it was just a cold. But after several sleepless nights and worsening symptoms, a doctor's visit revealed something far more serious. Sophia had asthma. The medication wasn't cheap, and the inhalers would be a constant expense. One evening, as Elena sat at her small kitchen table, her head buried in her hands, she began to wonder if she'd made a mistake thinking she could balance this new job with the pressures of motherhood and survival. To top it off, a major project for the CEO's company suddenly hit a snag. A data file had been lost, and Elena was accused, mistakenly, of being the one who misplaced it. Her stomach dropped when she received a terse email from the company's head of operations. "We'll need to pause your contract while we sort this out." In that moment, all the progress she'd made felt like it was slipping through her fingers. She could feel the cold weight of her old fears, eviction notices, unpaid bills, and sleepless nights, pressing down on her again. But deep down, Elena knew this was the very moment that would define her. It wasn't about whether life would knock her down, it was about whether she had the strength to get back up. Elena didn't have the luxury of falling apart. She had a daughter looking up to her, watching her every move, learning not just from what she said but from how she lived. The first thing she did was breathe. Just breathe, and remind herself of the journey so far. She had been through worse. She had faced rock bottom before and somehow found a way to climb back up. This was just another mountain. She reached out directly to the CEO, explaining the situation with calm professionalism. She didn't make excuses. She simply laid out the facts, provided her work logs, and respectfully asked for the chance to clear her name. The CEO, knowing her character from their first meeting, promised to personally look into the matter. In the meantime, Elena took action on every other front. She scoured listings and found a modest apartment in an older building. Not as nice as where she was, but clean, safe, and affordable. She set up a payment plan with the pharmacy for Sophia's medication and even reached out to a local charity that provided medical aid for children. 2 weeks later, the CEO called her personally. The missing file had been found. It was never her fault. He apologized for the misunderstanding and reinstated her contract, this time with a raise. He told her, "You handled this with more grace than most people in my position could have. That's why you'll go far." That moment felt like more than a victory. It was validation. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was growing into a woman who could face challenges head-on and win. Months later, Elena had turned her consulting role into a steady stream of projects, enough to give Sophia a stable home and even start a small savings account. She would often look back at that rainy day when she found the wallet, the day that changed everything. Her story became a quiet reminder that sometimes, doing the right thing isn't just about morality. It's about planting seeds for a future you can't yet see. If you're watching this right now, remember, your kindness, your integrity, and your courage are never wasted. They might just be the very things that open doors you never knew existed. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe for more stories that remind us all that even in the toughest moments, a single act of good can change a life forever. Maybe even yours.